Coming to Australia, you may be thinking you're coming to a land where you can go to the beach every weekend, where you can go around your mates and have a great barbecue, where you can see cuddly koalas and a whole host of fairly lethal wildlife as well. What you may not realise is that everybody in Australia has to fill in a tax return. It's not like that in many other countries. There, people throughout their working lives just don't have to fill in a tax return at all. All the tax is deducted at source. They don't have to bother with the tax office. Well, there's now a proposal that the same could happen in Australia, that we just scrap the annual tax return. The proposal comes from Jason Kerr, who's doing a PhD at the Australian School of Business and who joins me now. OK, Jason, so you're proposing that we just sweep away with the annual tax return and we sweep away with going along to the tax agent and it's just all happens automatically. For many people who've never lived or worked outside Australia, this would seem like a very strange system.
It sounds very drastic, doesn't it? It sounds like pie in the sky, but it seems to work OK in the UK, in New Zealand, in the majority of countries that were recently surveyed by the OECD. And the reason why it works is because you get it right first time. So your fortnightly pay, correct amount of tax taken out. Any interest or dividends that you have, tax is withheld at source. And for most people, probably about 8 million out of the 12 million that currently lodge tax returns, it's just a seamless, transparent, tax withheld at source system.
As opposed to what we've got at the moment, which almost seems like an interest-free loan to the government, and they might give some back if you fill in the right paperwork.
If you're lucky, that's right. But yeah, there is an argument that there is a refund culture in Australia, and that's probably why something like this does need to be researched further, which certainly keeps me awake at night doing my PhD.
It does seem an appallingly complicated process. You have to collect all the little bits of receipts, and you actually have to remember exactly what you'd spent and what your income was, go along to a tax agent, pay them a few $100s. And why have we got such a strange system anyway?
I do tend to think that there's probably a culture of complexity here in Australia. Like, to buy a house in New Zealand is about that much paperwork. To buy a house here is about this much paperwork. We also have compulsory voting as well, so it probably ties in with the same sort of thing, compulsory lodgement of tax returns. Take the UK, for example. People don't have to vote, people don't have to lodge tax returns.
I was talking earlier to Michael Shenzo, and he was saying that people actually enjoy filling in their tax return because they get some money back at the end of the process.
That's a good argument, isn't it? Like paying your electricity bills in advance so you can get something back at the end of the year, or a Christmas club bonus. I think most people would probably just prefer to have the money in their pockets, but not only that, just throw away the shoebox, so you don't have to visit a tax agent every single year. People hate it, they really do.
But there's a strong campaign saying that we need to keep the annual tax return, which I've got to be said is mainly being led by the tax experts themselves and those people who would stand to lose. If we actually do have a system like the UK has got of you don't fill in a tax return, suddenly wouldn't you end up with several thousand tax agents who are out of work?
The title of this conference is Risky Business, and that's one of the risks. Another risk is that people may not be as actively engaged in the tax system anymore if it's just automatic. They don't think about it. And so we've actually seen some recent developments in the UK where 2 weeks ago the Chancellor of the Exchequer said, look, let's have these personal tax statements so that people can actually see every year how much tax they've paid, because at the moment there's nothing. So that certainly is a downside. But for the sake of not having to worry about your tax ever again, simplification of tax returns certainly seems like the way to go.
There seems another argument, though, for keeping the current system of people can claim back certain things, certain work-related items. Is this actually the case? Are people gaining, or is this just more administration that goes into the process?
Julian, it's a churn. It really is. It's an administration process. Ken Henry, when he did his review into Australia's tax system, said, look, we've got all these tax agents out there, but they'd probably be of more value to the community if they were doctors, lawyers, high school students and so forth, rather than going through all these little minor deductions and offsets every single year for people.
And Jason, there must have been some research in terms of the total tax take that other countries have got when they scrapped having annual tax returns, or at least they changed the system. Does that show that the tax take in Australia would go down if we scrap a tax return?
Probably not. No, this is a neutral system, so it's revenue neutral, and if anything, there's less compliance costs for taxpayers, and certainly reduced administrative costs as well. So part of that burden then gets placed on employers, part of that burden then gets placed on financial institutions, but overall there will be a saving to the economy.
Jason Kerr, I'm sure there are many people who are on the point of thinking about going along and filling their annual tax return who will be very grateful if it's scrapped. Jason, it's been great talking to you.
Thanks, Julian.